Okay, chapter 15 is ecology. And under ecology, we start with definitions first. Definitions can be exam question, have been exam question. We start from the smallest level in the ecosystem until the largest ecosystem we can find. The definition normally begins with the species. So the definition of species, an organism, we start with organism here, but sometimes we can also start with the species. Organism is the basic unit of biotic component in an ecosystem. Smallest living component in the ecosystem is a single organism. Basic unit of biotic component. Now, from there, from one organism, which is also actually one species. The definition of species we didn't give here because there is a separate question in the same chapter. What is species? What is the definition of species? What are the problems related to definition of species? There is a separate question, this chapter or the next chapter. But if you want the definition of a species, the definition of species, ecological definition of species, there are a few things that you must have in your definition. Number one is under the species definition, it should be a group of organisms. Group of organism. Now, this group of organism this group of organism, what they can do is, what they have is, they have same morphology. They must have same morphology, physiology, anatomy. This is the three that we mentioned. They have the same morphology, anatomy, and physiology. You don't have to write all three, choose any two. Morphology is like outer characteristic. Anatomy, you can take like internal characteristic. Physiology is something like the chemical reactions that happens inside the body. Different processes that happens inside the body. Species, a group of organisms with same morphology, physiology, anatomy, and must be able to interpret. Able to interpret. Actually, all of this definition I will give in taxonomy that you have in chapter 14. Able to interpret, and after interpret, they must be able to produce the main thing. They must be able to produce fertile offspring. Mesti boleh dapatkan anak yang subur. So end of the day, they must get fertile offspring. Offspring means the next generation. If you take humans, children is offspring. A group of organisms with same morphology, anatomy, and physiology and can interpret to produce fertile offspring. Now, why we need to use the word fertile offspring is because they are organisms that can interbreed even though they are different species. Lion and tiger can interbreed. You get liger or you get tigon. You can check in the internet, just search for liger, L-I-G-E-R, or tigon, T-I-G-O-N. Lion and tiger can produce liger or tigon. Boleh dapat anak. If they can get offspring, then why they are different species? Lion is different species, tiger different species. What is the proof they are different species? Because they can interbreed, they can get offspring. Liger and tigon, both of them are sterile, mandul. Lion and tiger interbreed, they get offspring, but the offspring is sterile. They cannot produce the next generation. The offspring is not fertile. If the offspring is not fertile, that means they are different species. horse and donkey can reproduce, can get mule, M-U-L-E, mule, but the mule is sterile, cannot produce the next generation. So end of the day, the main criteria to know whether it's same or different species is, can they get fertile offspring? That's the ultimate test. Can get fertile offspring, same species. Cannot get fertile offspring, generally they are different species. So species, a group of organisms, same morphology, physiology, anatomy, can interbreed to produce fertile offspring. So that can also be grouped together with what we call as organism. Now, many organisms from the same species living in the same area, we call population. Collective group of organisms, same species living in a specific area is population. Population is basically one species, one area. That is population. One species, one area. That is population. A group of organisms from the same species living in a specific area is population. In this chapter, you learn population ecology. When you learn population ecology, you are going to do many calculations. So for example, here, every population, unique ecological characteristic, natality rate, birth rate. Natality rate is actually birth rate. Every population has a certain birth rate. If you have birth rate, there should also be death rate. Death rate is mortality rate. So every population has unique ecological characteristics such as natality rate and mortality rate. It will be explained in this same chapter. Later, there will be a question. What are the factors that affects population size in a population? Birth rate, death rate, all of this will come in. There's a lot of other factors. Later we'll explain. Every population also have unique genetic characteristic. Now this one you already learned in chapter 17, allele frequency and also genotype frequency. Every sentence is 1 mark. Every sentence. They can simply ask you, describe characteristic of a population, 4 marks. You have to write back all of this. 1 mark is for the example. The best choice is either use a lake or use a forest. These are the two commonly used, lake or forest. That will be population. So I have 4 sentences here. So we'll always reduce 1. So let's say this question can give you 3 marks. So population, I have 4 sentences, but maximum I think they're going to give you 3 marks. 1 minute. The first definition in ecological hierarchy is species. Definition I gave you. If you have one species, many organisms in the same area, population. Now, one area may have many populations. Like if you see National Geography in the savannah, population of lion, population of zebra, population of hyena. Many population living in the same area becomes community. That is the next definition. Basically, it's many species, but in one area is community. So many species living in the same area. When many species living in the same area, they are going to interact with one another. So community definition. Natural collection of all populations in a specific area. Many population in one area. Many population means many species. So, and there is an explanation in the same chapter. we need to inform the characteristic of a community. One other characteristic that you are going to learn is the community is always changing through a process called succession. Now, succession is something you did learn in Form 4, in Form 4, mangrove swamp, Avicennia, Soniratia, Rhizophora, Bruguiera. I don't know whether you remember or not. But there is an explanation how an empty land slowly becomes a tropical rainforest. How does the succession occur? From one species, replaced with another species, replaced with another species. In the end, you get a stable ecosystem. A stable ecosystem is known as a climax community. That's the ending. Tropical rainforest from Malaysia. From an unstable community, advance, take very long time, hundreds, thousands of years. In the end, we get tropical rainforest. But the tropical rainforest is a stable, but it's not permanent. It can change overnight. Suddenly, maybe there is an earthquake. Maybe there is a landslide. Maybe there is a forest fire. We don't know. And because of the forest fire, the whole forest might become destroyed. So they started from the empty land, slowly formed the forest. Now the forest now destroyed. So they have to start back from the beginning to form. So the environment is not constant. Because of that, the community also sometimes may become destroyed. So it's not stable. It's constantly changing through a process called succession. What is succession? What are the organisms involved in succession? We'll cover in later part of the same chapter. Climax community is the stable one, but it's not permanent. Sometimes it can be affected by the environment. Example, tropical rainforest destroyed by forest fire. So the community that used to be stable now has been destroyed. The community have to reform. How to form back a stable community? There's a process called succession. We'll cover later. As usual, giving example is 1 mark. So you can use either a lake or you can use a forest, your choice. I've given here a lake community. Until here, species, population, community is all about living organism. We didn't mention anything about non-living. Everything, species, population, community, we only mention living organism. Population, many organisms, same species, one area. Community, many populations, one area, interact to form a stable community. But the thing that we take for granted is living cannot survive without non-living. Without oxygen, organism cannot survive. Without water, organisms cannot survive. Without sunlight, plants cannot survive. Sunlight, water, oxygen, all of these are non-living. As I'm explaining to you, I'm breathing. I'm interacting with the atmosphere to get oxygen. I might be drinking. I feel thirsty. So drinking, I'm interacting with water. These are all non-living. Living and non-living interact, then only you get ecosystem. The moment we have ecosystem, living and living interact. Living and non-living interact. Living we call biotic, non-living we call abiotic. Biotic interact. Living and living interact. A lion kills a deer. Living and living interact, different species. The lion, after eating the deer, goes and drink water from the river, now interacting with the non-living, which is the water in the river. Living and living interact, living and non-living interact. They form a stable ecosystem. Living, non-living interact to form a stable and balanced natural system. That will be the last definition for today. Ecosystem consists of biotic components and abiotic components that interacts with one another to form a stable and balanced natural system. Every sentence that I underline is one question. What is biotic? One question. What is abiotic? Separate question. How do they interact? A few questions. How to form a stable and balanced nature system is another question. The definition of ecosystem summarizes the chapter. What you need to explain in this whole chapter. What is biotic? What is abiotic? How they interact? How the interaction forms stable, balanced nature system. Other questions that you are going to learn in this chapter. Ecosystem have energy flow. Energy flows through the ecosystem. How energy is transported in the ecosystem? One question. How the energy flows, not transported, flows in the ecosystem? One question. How nutrients are recycled? Biogeochemical cycle. We have two questions. We have, like in Form 5, you learn nitrogen cycle. In STPM, we have sulfur cycle, phosphorus cycle. Maybe carbon cycle also. Nitrogen cycle is not in Form STPM. SPM, you have nitrogen cycle. How biotic interact with one another. It continues in the next page. We also have abiotic component. Biotic component, we'll explain about biotic later. I'll just underline first. Biotic, 3 trophic level, producers, consumers, decomposers. Example, abiotic, non-living. Example is all of this. General description of ecosystem is worth 5 marks. General description of community is worth 4 marks. So this is 3. This is 4. Community can give you 4 marks. Population can give you 3 marks. Ecosystem can give you 5 marks. And in the old syllabus, definition of ecosystem banyak kali keluar. In new syllabus, not yet, I think, but if they want, they can ask. Simple question. Describe about ecosystem. Definition, 1 mark. The rest of the sentence, every sentence is 1 mark. Every sentence is one essay question that we are going to learn later. Now you have your sulfur and phosphorus cycle. So later you are going to see you learn about phosphate cycle, and we also write sulfur cycle. So what you have at the definition is what this chapter is all about. So we are done with the main definitions. We have species definition. We have population definition and general characteristic. We have community definition, general characteristic, ecosystem definition, and general characteristic. Every one of them can be an essay question on their own. 3 marks, 4 marks, 5 marks. Write back what you have in the notes. That is the answer. I've already mentioned many times. I love chapters that are technical. 18, 17, 18, 19. Enjoy. 14, 15, 16 is the long essay questions, and they are going to be like this. Every explanation is like this. Facts for you to understand, memorize, understand, memorize. Biome is the largest ecosystem. A large community occupy a wide geographic zone. They cover a large area. Example is tropical rainforest. Earth is the biosphere. Once you get the notes later, you'll have a picture like this. One organism, one species. Many organisms, same species, population. Many population in the same area, community. The moment we include non-living, it becomes ecosystem. Water, air, atmosphere, sunlight, ecosystem. The larger ecosystem is biome. The largest is the biosphere, the portion of the earth where living organisms can be found. All of these are introduction. This chapter is a huge chapter. So much more to be explained. This notes itself, I've only covered 2 pages. The notes itself have 20 pages because this is part 1. I divide to 2 because there is part 2. Part 2 has another 15 pages. So there's 35 pages of explanation, this one chapter alone. Huge chapter. 14 is huge, 15 is huge, 17 is huge, 16 also huge. We'll cover one by one.